on there, Lieutenant?
Is this what I think it is?
What do you think it is?
Well, it looks like a human head all shrunken.
It is indeed a shrunken human head.
Welcome to episode 49 of the Columbo podcast, where it's not just our heads that are shrunken.
Brains as well, otherwise they'd be spilling out all over the place.
Really?
Well, if your head shrank and your brain didn't.
That's true. I thought
Maybe not your brain.
Very good, Ian. How are we?
Very well.
A military theme we have this week.
Yes.
Not normally your favourite.
Well, when we did one earlier in the run, I specifically disliked it.
What are the two military ones we've had so far?
Dead Weight, which I didn't mind, and In the Line of Fire.
Not in the Line of Fire. You've been
Yes.
watching too much Clint Eastwood.
The
Dawn's
Good, the
Early
Bad,
Light.
and the Ugly.
By Dawn's Early Light.
By Dawn's Early Light, of course
Yeah.
it is.
And you had stated in that you weren't a fan of military-themed.
It wasn't so
episodes.
much the military theme as the episode sensibilities, I think. It was the fact that the episode was in tune with the military theme. Whereas this one was slightly different.
Okay. So I was a little bit worried that you might again find this not to your taste. Am I right or am I wrong?
No, you're wrong. This was by far my favourite of the 4 new episodes so far.
Good. I enjoyed it myself.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. So the favourite of this season, you say?
Yeah, well, obviously this is the season finale, and I would say it was better than the 3 that came before it.
Yeah, you've actually got a big smell. I actually think you really quite enjoyed this one.
I did.
Yeah, good. So not just a good one for the new Columbo, but this would be a good one overall.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
there's obviously things that we can pick out, and we're going to.
We always do. There always
But-
are.
I very much enjoyed it.
Brilliant. I'm glad to hear it. A positive note to start with.
Yeah.
In that case, Ian, why don't we proceed with this week's summary?
In Grand Deceptions, Colonel Frank Braley has a secret. For some time, he has been using the discretionary Special Projects Fund of the First Foundation for American Thought, a conservative think tank, to fund extra-legal arms shipments and other unlawful work. His projects have also involved significant payments to his personal accounts around the world. Sergeant Major Lester Keegan has been tasked by General Jack Paget to investigate the use of Foundation funds for special projects, and he confronts Braley, intent on blackmailing him for his own personal gain. This grubby little arrangement, however, is nipped in the bud as Braley murders Keegan and places his body next to some explosives. Lieutenant Columbo is tasked with investigating what seems to have been a bizarre accident. The evidence suggests foul play, but can he pin down his suspect when explosive revelations threaten to change allegiances?
Thanks for that, Ian. Insightful as always. We open with a military-style score over a view of American Civil War figurines on a very large board.
It looks like some kind of model recreation of a battle.
Mm-hmm.
It looked to me like maybe Gettysburg.
Oh yeah. Obviously, that's why. For the first time I watched it, I thought, that looks like Gettysburg.
My note was it's either the Civil War or the War of Independence. That's how specific I got.
So, the camera rises, and we see a man who we come to learn is a Frank Braley.
Yeah,
Colonel Frank Braley, I think.
he is, and he closes a curtain so that nobody can see what he's been working on.
Mm-hmm. He has been unboxing and organising these figurines, these toy soldiers,
Yeah,
and then he leaves the house.
he does. He meets the man cleaning the pool who addresses him as Corporal.
Yes. Now, we meet this man later in the episode, and I think he's a little bit more senior than Pool Boy, but that's why I refer to him in my notes, Pool Boy.
I think this episode, one of the first issues I had with this episode was not identifying people very clearly at the start.
Yes, and I think you mentioned earlier today that you had an issue with location sometimes not
It's a
being
similar
too clear.
problem. Yeah,
I
it's
think
a
we had that
similar.
last week as well. So, let's be clear here. This opening scene takes place in a General Paget's pool house.
Yes.
So it's like his garden shed, his clubhouse, his boys' room.
That's it.
At the end of the larger house where he lives with his wife, Jenny.
Correct.
So we have this Frank Braley, and as you said, he leaves and is stopped by the pool cleaner, who informs him that there apparently, and surprisingly to us, is no sign of the toy soldiers which have been ordered.
But we've just seen them.
Mm-hmm. So were you clear at this point?
I assume there was more coming.
Braley mentions that additional soldiers have been ordered. They've obviously been lost, he says, I think.
Yeah, but I think what we don't realise is that the pool guy doesn't think any soldiers have arrived. He thinks a box of books has arrived.
Of course. Braley then tells the pool boy that the General's office is off limits until his surprise party that evening.
That's right.
He then mentions that he will be at the camp until noon and then at the foundation. So do you want to describe what this camp and foundation is or are?
Yeah, the camp is where they train mercenaries to fight like the military. Or civilians.
In 2 weeks after applying through a magazine.
It's a bit like A-team school.
Yes, it is. They're a ragtag bunch, aren't they, of losers and no-hopers.
Soldiers of fortune, you might say.
You might say that. Weirdos and oddballs and pretend soldiers.
There's a great scene later on.
There is.
When we introduce ourselves to some of them.
Mm-hmm. In fact, remind me, I'll mention one of them at that point.
Okay.
So we go to this foundation. It's the first foundation for American thought, I think they call it, yeah. And we go to the training camp.
Yep, training battalion, I think it's referred to.
We see Braley address a ragtag bunch of militia types who have paid money to be trained in killing for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
This immediately struck me just as a money-making scam.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what the purpose of. Although, you know, you've heard recently in Ferguson, you had these civilian militia appearing on rooftops and things like that with guns. It's maybe just a thing in America where you have civilians, they've got their Second Amendment rights.
Well, don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting it doesn't exist, but what I'm saying is the training element of it is a scam. You are basically realising as a business that there's an opportunity here to take money off doughballs who want to be trained in killing. Weirdos who are willing to be paid in order to think that they're somehow part of the military and are trained killing machines. They're just idiots who are quite happy to give you cash.
That's it.
It's a con. They're not learning any real skills in 2 weeks.
No, of course not. Anyway, he tells them to live what they've learned.
Yes. And then we find out that there apparently is a final manoeuvre that night led by a Sergeant Keegan.
Yeah, one final event or mission type thing.
Their final test type.
And that'll be them through. Presuming they survive.
We go to this Sergeant Keegan's office. Keegan and Braley effectively acknowledge the sham, but note that it pays well.
Yeah.
So I think they both have a genuine military background, and now they're supplementing their retirement or their retirement funds by running this.
It's not clear, but I think actually what they're doing is funding the think tank.
Yes, they are. That's what I'm saying. They've become involved in this after being discharged from the military.
Yeah, they're not military themselves anymore.
No. And we discover that Braley runs the foundation for the General.
Yep.
And Keegan works for Braley.
Although, we're also told that the General doesn't trust Frank anymore and is more fond of Keegan.
You are correct. And Keegan goes a step further. He mentions a special projects fund. And he admits to Braley himself that the General Paget, doesn't trust him, and Keegan has been asked by Paget to do some snooping.
That's right.
He has done this snooping. What has he found out?
Well, he's found out some inappropriate use of funds.
He has. It transpires that Braley has been supplying unscrupulous agencies or groups around the world, militias perhaps around the world. When I say unscrupulous, actually what I really mean is agencies and groups that perhaps don't have America's best interest at heart. We don't know who they are, and they may be actually entirely legitimate. Because
this is around about a time, this is Cold War time, when America was arming groups in these parts of the world.
We shouldn't just pick on America, in cahoots with the UK government.
Of course.
Yes, they were involved in, and still are involved in all sorts of dodgy business.
We've seen it time and time again, and it comes back to roost when people that you've armed, like Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden, turn out not to be your pals after all.
Exactly. But for the purposes of this episode, Braley is to be considered to be supplying weaponry purely for financial benefit to anyone who has the cash. Not only that, but he has been pocketing some of the money himself.
Yeah, he's not working on an ideological basis at all. He's purely for personal profit.
He is. Keegan mentions that he understands Braley has been having an affair.
Yes, it's heavily implied that it was with someone he shouldn't have been having an affair with.
Yes. So after disclosing what he knows, we then find out what he wants.
Sergeant Major Keegan, you seem to have a great deal on your mind.
Well, Frank, you see, I got this idea in my head that if the Foundation's got money for you, you've got money for me. What do you say, partner?
It's the old Army game, Lester. All those black phone calls you've been making. You call your friends, they call you. They pump their friends call me. And round it goes. So I guess I'm about 3 points ahead of you on this. As for whom I may or may not be sleeping with, I've noticed you've been following me around here and there. Lester, you don't do that very well, so I know all about that, too.
So what are we going to do about all this?
We're going to take care of each other. So long as neither one of us gets greedy.
Starting when?
Give me a couple of days to bring you an offer. Old battle comrades never die. They just get rich together.
No hard feelings, Frank?
Life's too short. Nobody knows that better than we do, huh?
That's right.
Never ends well for a blackmailer in Columbo.
Well, rarely ends well.
Andy Romano played Sergeant Major Keegan. He was born in 1941. He has been in NYPD Blue, Under Siege, LA Law, Matlock, Hill Street Blues, and T.J. Hooker, amongst many other things.
It's a familiar name.
Yeah. Peter Falk was in a not great movie called Corky Romano, one of these final movies.
There you go.
So from Keegan's office, we head over to the Foundation itself.
Yes, this is where we learn the full name.
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier. Remind us what it is.
It's the First Foundation for American Thought, which translates to conservative right-wing thought.
I think so, yes. We see a wheelchair-bound general. That's the general Paget that we've referred to. And he's charming his audience with praise as I think he's accepting the chairmanship as at the same time he's sort of standing down from the day-to-day business of what's going on.
That seems to be...
Yeah, effectively it's his retirement due, I think.
I think so.
And he and his younger wife go into his office along with Braley.
I should point out it's not at all clear that she's his wife.
Okay. See, I've noted his wife, but that's because I already knew, so you didn't realise, or you didn't think.
I have a number of different notes saying, is she his daughter, his wife? Obviously it's someone that he cares about, it's made clear, but they don't mention the fact that she's his wife until quite a lot later in the episode.
Sure. The General praises Keegan and reminds Braley that he has not received his special fund report as yet.
Yep, he mentions that he thinks he's being diddled, or he knows when he's being diddled.
Well, he mentions this after Braley produces it for him, and he seems surprised, and then he makes that comment. So up to that point, he did have his suspicions.
Yeah, and he takes it all back and wants to see some fancy new computer system.
Yeah, and he leaves. The secretary then enters, and she notes that there are 2 special project reports, and Braley tells her to leave them, and he places them both in the safe.
Now, why would you have a report drawn up with your nefarious deeds laid out in it?
You might not. So it would depend who collated this report. If someone else had to pull it together.
Yeah, it might not show everything, but it might give you enough information to point you to the dodgy deals.
And then he might himself amend it to take that out. So they have the original one, which looks bad for him, and then you've got his one, where he basically removes or edits.
I mean, I think we can probably assume it doesn't just say $8 million to
my bank account. No.
Here's the sort code.
From there we go to, what I first assumed was Braley's house, but I think it's an apartment that
it's his little love nest.
Yes. And we discover Braley in bed with Jenny, who is the wife of
We
the
still
general.
don't know that, though.
No.
I still didn't know that. So, yes, but she
Although...
makes it clear that this would hurt the general if he
Yeah.
found out.
So at that point you must have realised.
I strongly suspected, but she was so much younger than the general.
Yeah, but come on, it was or is a very powerful and famous man.
Sure, but she
not
could have been his daughter, and that might still have hurt him if it was someone, if she'd been asked not to get involved with the guys at the
At a
foundation.
push, I think, to be honest, Ian, at this point it should be fairly obvious.
I do have young wife question mark in my notes, so obviously I was leaning that way.
Yeah. In any case, Braley seems to accept this and promises that the general will never know.
He's lying.
He is. We go to the camp again, and we see Keegan.
Yeah, it's a very brief sort of scene with him and the trainees, just kind of briefing them ahead of this final manoeuvre.
The purpose of this scene is so that we, the audience, realise that there are areas where explosives will be planted in order to make this night manoeuvre seem more realistic.
And they're marked in white.
Yes, and that's what's happening that evening, in the dark, in the mud.
It is.
We're now in the General's house, and he's celebrating his birthday with a dinner party and receiving donations for the foundation.
That's right. He and Frank are collaborating on a poem about a camel.
Yeah, it's quite a risque one. Saucy.
Yeah. It's
Something
being
to-
enjoyed by the other guests, or at least
Oh,
they're pretending to enjoy
yeah.
it for the general's humour.
Not feeling uncomfortable at all. Either that or they've all had a good drink in them.
Yeah, we get this traditional Columbo thing of flipping back and forward between two scenes here.
We do. We cut back to the manoeuvres and we see gunfire and explosions. So that's to let us know that this is now underway, as Braley is
Yeah.
whining and dining people.
It's good because it gives us a time reference, which you don't always get.
Braley then tells Jenny that the toys have now been delivered and he's going to try and set them up. Now, it's quite an expansive arrangement and
Yeah.
apparently it takes around 2 hours. That would be a
Well, he's
reasonable...
pushing it to do it in 2 hours, I think, and even if he doesn't get finished, at least he has something to show.
Yes, and he asks Jenny to bring all the guests to the pool house in 2 hours' time.
And he's off.
So this is his alibi being arranged.
Absolutely it is.
In the pool house, we see Braley bring in the box containing what we think are the soldiers.
Or at least what he said are the soldiers.
But it transpires that it is full of books. So what type of books is it?
They're Civil War books, they're connected to the display, but it takes him literally about 2 minutes to fire them onto a shelf.
It does. This is perhaps an area where I've got a slight issue. Perhaps we can work through it slightly here. Surely the supplier, the shop that has sent these toys out, can identify. It would only take the police a few moments to ask them when they were sent.
Well, they would need a reason to ask. Why would they ask that? They've not got a reason to doubt it until the story doesn't fit.
True.
I mean, obviously it's one shop has sent them both because the box, the toys came in says Macadam Books on it. something like
Yes.
that. But yeah, no, I would say that there would be no reason for the police to ask that until something happened that made them think, oh, maybe he did have the toys already. I don't think that would be an obvious thing to check.
Yeah, but they came in different boxes.
They did.
Who packed them in the wrong boxes? Or did they come
They're not
in
in the wrong boxes, they're in the right boxes. They both came from the bookshop. The bookshop, or Macadam Books, I think, something like that, sent them both. But
Yeah.
they just so happened that the first box that said books on it had toys in it because that was the first delivery.
Okay. But he would have, for this plan to work, there's just something here that's not quite right in my head. You're answering them all very well, Ian, but I think there's still something there. Okay, they came at different times.
They did.
He's planned and arranged this murder. How would he know what would come and when they would, in what order they would come?
He couldn't have known that
Unless he asked them.
in advance, unless they had both already come and he has sent one away to be redelivered or
Okay,
something.
that again's quite chancy as well.
Yeah.
Who's there to take?
Yeah, that's
When they
true.
get delivered, how does he know when they'll be?
Well, maybe his alibi plan has only come together once he was in that situation. But then how did he know it would be delivered?
Yeah, there's just something around this that doesn't sit with me. That it's not. You're either.
But then we don't hear him getting told they've arrived. So it could be that everything had arrived. Or if everything had arrived, he would just have said they hadn't arrived. and then said, "Oh, they have now, I'm going over." It could just be that he took advantage of what happened to set up his alibi that way.
Yeah. See, that bit is a weakness for me, this whole when they arrived and how he could be sure that he's the only one who knew, and there's too much left to chance here for me. Chancey. Mm-hmm. In any case, Braley leaves the pool house for the camp.
Yeah, we kind of flip ahead of him and we see Lester working with the team to say what needs done. He's going down a checklist, I think.
Mm-hmm. Lester is Keegan.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Lester Keegan.
Yep.
He's a man with 2 surnames.
Yes.
And he is on his own in a separate area from where we saw him earlier.
Yes. We hear him and see him radio to colleagues and tell him that he is leaving the scene.
Yeah, he's done his final checks and he's away.
Mm-hmm. But what happens?
Well, Frank's there in a balaclava.
He jumps out like a ninja. American Ninja Part 4.
That's it, and stabs him.
He does. And then he drags him face up into an explosive area. The white circle that we'd been shown before.
Yeah, you would think his expectation here is, because he rolls on his front, I think the expectation being that the explosion will mask the knife wound.
And I think it did, because it masked the initial autopsy, apparently.
Yeah, they needed a second autopsy to find it.
He leaves, but before he does so, he throws Keegan's flashlight over in his general direction.
That was a mistake.
It was a mistake. Braley then heads to Keegan's office and he puts down a sheet and removes his balaclava and his overalls before disposing of them into a trash can outside.
He puts them in a black bag and drags them away.
And he then returns to the pool house in his military garb.
Yeah, you get this thing we've seen a few times before. I think Troubled Waters and a couple of others. Has he made it back in time?
Mm-hmm.
Because the others are there. We don't see him arrive. And they pull back the curtain.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't said anything, but he's there.
He is. And they wish the general happy birthday, and the miniatures and the books are unveiled.
And the general is delighted. He's thrilled, and he reflects on the battle it represents.
He does. There are a couple of cuts now. One to the explosive show at the camp, and another cutting back to the general. And we hear him say, "I think we have just lost one of our men."
Yeah, because one of the models falls over just at that
Yes.
moment. The death comes around about the 20-minute mark of the episode. I think that's one of the reasons that I like it. I like it when they take a bit of time to set it up.
Yes.
I think most of my favourite episodes have that sort of... It's not just a death and then we work out what's been going on. You get the setup and then you see the killing.
Yeah, it's not just the setup, but what that allows, it allows the episode a little room to breathe and provide us with some character development as well.
Well, absolutely. How are you meant to care about a murder victim that you only see getting killed? You don't know anything about them.
Mm-hmm. Not just that, but you understand more about the motive.
And the relationship between the killer and the victim as well.
The personality as well, so we know what to expect when Columbo arrives on the scene, as he is about to.
He is the next day.
Mm-hmm. It's the morning, and we are introduced to Columbo accompanied by a military version of...
This Old Man. It's brilliant. It was one of my favourite things of this scene. It's
Was it?
just the sort of military tunes playing, and suddenly you think, oh, hang on.
Yeah.
They kind of work that into the military music. It's good. Columbo's rummaging in a pile of leaves.
Yeah, he's back to the way I prefer him to act. He's being proactive, he's been hands-on. He's not simply... It's not one of these miracle things where he decides to look at the body.
And suddenly spots the answer, yeah.
He's looking around here, he's getting fingers in his hands dirty.
Absolutely. And Braley shows up and Columbo recognises him.
He does. And what happens?
Well, he spots him and he knows he's a colonel from the Foundation, and he gets a bit of information about what the training centre was for.
Yes. But Braley is surprised to hear that Columbo is from Homicide, and Columbo explains that there is an issue. But firstly, we hear Columbo being impressed that the chairman of the Foundation is General Paget, a man of history.
Yes. Similar reaction to Deadweight when what was it, Hollister?
Mm-hmm.
Was introduced, and it was a similar response.
Yeah. Now, the problem that Columbo has is that he wants to know why Keegan said that he was leaving the site on the radio, but was still there an hour later.
It's a good point.
Braley suggests that perhaps he was checking wiring or perhaps he was there looking for someone or something.
Yeah, he gives a number of different options, essentially saying, I don't know.
And for the first time in the episode, he makes it clear that he was setting up the General's present. He offers an alibi before being asked.
That's suspicious. Mm-hmm. But Columbo picks up on that immediately and says he's going to write this off as an accident.
And Braley is visibly pleased. We see him sort of his shoulders straightening. He feels an awful lot happier at this.
And you think, Columbo's working this guy already.
We then hear excited voices as Braley is leaving the scene.
Yeah, well, Columbo goes back to examine the body. And meantime, his team have found something he's asked them to look for.
What's that?
The flashlight.
And where do they find it?
Under the lip of a rock.
Yeah. Columbo does a very dramatic piece where he makes everyone note what it is before bagging the flashlight.
He's done that before. It reminded me of... I'm trying to think. I think it was the end of Double Exposure. No, Negative Reaction.
Yeah.
When he said,
Yes.
Did you hear what he said? Did
Yeah,
you hear
yeah.
what he said?
As you mentioned a moment ago, before the flashlight was found, Columbo was going to re-inspect the body.
Yeah.
And he finds something interesting.
He does, but it's not clear. There's leaves under the collar, but we don't know why that's important. Frank has a look of concern on his face.
He does.
I say, Frank, that's not really splitting them up, is it?
Ah, we'll get to that, Ian. We'll get to that. So we're back in Keegan's office. We hear Braley close down the camp and address the troop before entering the office.
Yeah, he's given them a speech. And again, this rings a bell saying, don't get too upset about this. This is the profession we picked. We're all soldiers.
By dawn's early light, yeah.
Was that when it happened?
Yeah.
Yes, it was. And then he nips into
The office.
Keegan's...
Yeah.
No, Keegan's quarters.
Is that not the same place? I think
It's definitely living quarters because there's a bed.
Yeah, I think that might be I've just called it Keegan's office. I think
Right.
he might have a bed there as well.
And
in any case,
he looks out the window.
and he sees the garbage truck take away the trash can that contained the overalls and balaclava, etc.
And we don't hear about them again.
No. But he then spots a piece of mud on the floor, and he gets a little bit panicky.
And he cleans it up.
He immediately cleans it up, and as he's on his hands and knees, who enters?
Columbo, who apologises for trailing in the mud earlier.
Mm-hmm. And then Columbo discusses different types of mud with him.
He gives him a lecture on the 7 different types of mud and why they're important.
That's a bit Sherlockian.
A little bit.
Yeah, Sherlock Holmes can certainly tell you about different types of mud and where they came from and where they'd be found and all that type of
Yeah,
thing.
but it sounds like the kind of thing that Columbo is saying because he needs time. This is knowledge that Columbo has. He could recite this to anyone at any time.
Sure.
So what he's doing here, we learn later, this is when he first suspects Frank. So I think he's processing that information and he's giving him a spiel to keep him where he is for right now.
Braley then gives Columbo an opening by saying that he wouldn't like him on his trail. And Columbo asks what he was doing there.
Well, he gets a great response. He says, if that were the case, if I was on your trail, I'd have to ask you what you were doing in the victim's quarters.
And Braley gives a fairly acceptable response. He says that he was saying a final goodbye.
I thought that was weak.
Did you?
Yeah.
I had no problem with that. I think that's the type of thing that you might do. You go to the place where perhaps he worked or you met with him or where you knew him best.
Maybe. I mean, we suppose we've talked about this before, that there isn't a textbook for grief.
No.
So if you're dealing with someone that you think or you believe has lost someone they care about, then you can't say this is what they should have done or would have done.
But you see, it's mentioned later that he only went down there a few times, perhaps, at the start of each the induction of each new troop, which might be every 2 weeks, I think. But this would be where he would meet with Keegan. This
Yeah.
is where they would chat and have a discussion. So I think, yeah, you can give him that.
We now move to a scene that we talked about earlier on.
Yes, so Braley leaves and Columbo he's asked to speak to some of these recruits.
They're brilliant. Which was your favourite?
They're oddballs. Well, I'll tell you who my favourite was. It's the one, I can't remember his name, but in the credits he's known as Paramilitary Number 3.
So he's the one who just goes to lots of camps and he lists all the different...
No, he was my favourite, but no, there's another one beforehand. the tougher...
Was he the one who was preparing for the time of anarchy when the
Yes.
element comes?
I think so. Now, he was played by Lee Arenberg, and he's went on to have quite a high-profile career. Born in 1962, he's been in all the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, Once Upon a Time, Friends, ER, Seinfeld, and, you might like this, Star Trek Enterprise, Star Trek Voyager, Star Trek Next Generation, and Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
There you go.
So, is that all four of the... Obviously not the original run, but is there any other ones in the universe? What other Star Treks do you get?
Just of the movies, other than that.
Yeah. So he's been in all the
modern series.
Can't be many people that have done that, is there?
It's not many. The second one that we didn't touch on didn't have quite as exciting a story. He's just took the course because he read the ad. It's 2 weeks to become a mercenary. So this is where we learn it's a 2-week course.
Yeah. This is why I'm saying this is just a scam. It's just taking money off people. You know, if you can't. These are just oddballs.
Yeah. After speaking with these people, Columbo heads off to wait for Braley at the Foundation office.
Yes, and the secretary tells Columbo that the Foundation is effectively a think tank. Columbo's still unsure of what they think about.
For the country's problems.
Yeah, I'm still unsure.
Essentially, it's they're thinking about war and who they should kill next to promote American interests.
He goes for a wander and opens a door to see people involved in... It reminded me of the guillotine again. Columbo goes to the guillotine, opens up a door, there's people involved in...
Also in Sex and the Mad Detective, when he wanted to sit in on the session.
Yes.
They looked to me like they were shaking spaghetti. It's I Ching.
Yeah. I Ching, you Ching, we all Ching.
We learn a bit more about this game, or not really a game.
Yeah, this con... I mean, no, this
method of fortune telling later on.
Yes. Braley appears, and he shows off by telling the secretary that he needs to speak to the Dalai Lama before some trip or other. He's just name-dropping here, really, I think.
He is.
And he explains that what they do is that they're involved in contingency planning on behalf of the government.
Yeah. What if these bad guys attack? What if these bad guys are weak? And how can we secure the oil reserves from that country?
And Columbo then notes the shrunken head that we heard at the top of the podcast.
Reminded me of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. There's shrunken heads in the bus.
Not watched it.
Oh, there's shrunken heads.
In the bus?
On the bus at the start.
Okay.
You only have to watch the first 10 minutes, you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. I might just grab the clip on YouTube.
Yeah.
Send me a link.
Okay.
Braley then tells Columbo that the training camp helps to fund the apparently more academic foundation.
Yeah, Columbo's quite focused here on the contrast between the foundation and the training camp.
Mm-hmm.
And Frank generally agrees. You know, he gets that there's not a real sort of cohesion between the two, but that the money's useful.
Of course. Columbo's there because he wants help with regards to Keegan.
He's found something.
Yes, he understands that he was looking for a new job and that he had circled numerous adverts which all stopped on the Monday.
Yeah, well, it was every day up until that, and then they stopped.
What's your point?
Well, here's a man. He's looking in the newspapers for a new job. He's looking every day. He's looking and marking the ads. Then 6 days ago, everything changes. He stops looking. No more ads. I gotta ask myself, what happened last Monday? What changed in Mr. Keegan's life last Monday? Can you think of anything, sir?
I can't imagine, Lieutenant. I only visited the camp when new classes began and ended.
Do you think he could have found a new job?
I can't conceive Lester even looking for another job.
Well, we can't read the man's mind, can we, sir? All right. Well, thank you very much for your help. I'll just be running along. He never talked to you about a raise, money, anything like that?
Nothing like that. Lester was perfectly happy with his life when I saw him yesterday morning. What could this possibly have to do with his accident?
Exactly, sir. That's my point. Here we have an accident on our hands. My report is going to call this an accident. And there we go. We're complicating it with a lot of questions. The paperwork is going to go on forever unless we just learn to forget about these little questions. All right, sir. Well, thank you again.
Good day, Lieutenant.
Good day, sir.
As you might suspect, that was not Columbo leaving.
No, and he will not be forgetting about those little questions.
Yeah, he comes back immediately and asks about the I Ching sticks.
Yeah, and Braley explains how they are meant to predict the future.
And then we get another interesting one more thing.
Columbo shows Braley the leaves in the dirt that were removed from Keegan's collar, and Braley suggests the explosion may have blown them in there.
Columbo's clearly considering the possibility of the victim having been dragged on his back.
Yes, however, Braley insists that explosions can cause random results, and for the time being, Columbo appears to accept this reason. And the leaves are interesting, not necessarily because of what they represent with regards to the plot, but for the fact that if you pause the DVD at the point that Columbo lifts them up to be viewed by Braley, you can see something very, very clearly.
Leaves.
And dirt.
Yeah.
What else can you see, Ian?
You can see that the bag is marked in pen.
And what does this pen mark reveal?
Something like victim's collar, found under victim's collar. And the next line, it says Lieutenant Frank Columbo.
It does. We have the clearest proof yet that Frank is Columbo's first name. I mean, we saw that before in Dead Weight at the other military, or one of the other military episodes, but I think this is the clearest we can see it.
It's certainly indisputable.
It is. So that's that put to bed.
Well, that's if you consider that to be canon. Could just be a prop guy playing funny games.
No, it's canon.
Okay. As a call comes in, and it's for Columbo.
And who is making the call?
The General, Paget,
who invites him over to have a little chat.
At the pool house.
Columbo arrives with a companion.
Dog. This seems similar to me to the last episode, the one before, where Dog was in a scene just to be in it?
Yeah. Fan favourite.
Fan service.
He offers him a cookie to watch the car, but tells him he'll get a cookie anyway.
Even if the car's stolen. But then surely the dog would be in the car if it was stolen.
No, if I was stealing a car, I would let the dog out first. Why would I want to dog nap a dog?
We don't know the dog's there.
Sit in the driver's seat.
Yeah, that's true.
And he is singing This Old Man,
and
Columbo,
playing
not
through
the
the music
dog.
as well. Yeah.
Jenny answers the door.
This is great. They've turned a trope on its head here.
What do they do?
She admires his car and talks in glowing terms about it and says she used to have one.
Indeed.
This is where we find out she's married to the General.
Yes, and he moves through to the pool house, and Columbo impresses the General with his recognition of Cemetery Ridge and his general Civil War knowledge.
Yeah, he says he's got a nephew who does recreations. I suspect he's just revised ahead of this.
I really like the dynamic and the relationship between both characters here. I think they play off each other very well.
Yeah, the General is very receptive towards Columbo.
Yeah. Columbo admires the books that Braley set up, and he finds a toy soldier behind one of them on the shelf.
Interesting.
It is, but not yet to Columbo at this point.
Yeah, he simply places it on the board where instructed.
Now, the General then tells Columbo that he asked Keegan to monitor and to look into the Special Projects Fund administered by Braley.
Interestingly, he gave him this remit on Monday, when the job adverts stopped.
Correct. He tells Columbo that millions of dollars have went into this fund and that he has had problems trying to get a report from Braley.
But now he has one.
He does.
Still, he asks Columbo to keep his eyes open.
Columbo agrees, and the General gives him a toy soldier to take away in order to return it.
Make sure he comes back, because otherwise the General's going to tell people he stole it.
Like I say, yeah, I like this.
I like it very much, yep. I like the General, generally.
Hey.
I thought it was good.
Yes. He was played by Stephen Elliott. This is his second of 2 Columbo episodes.
Do you remember his first?
Well, of course I do. Do you?
Oh, let me guess. Was he the blind man with George Hamilton?
No, he wasn't.
Oh. What season was he in?
You're very close. We've done some research, Ian.
No?
No. He played Carol Donner in Deadly State of Mind.
That's the same episode.
Yes, he played the the victim, or the second victim.
The husband at the start of the episode.
Yes. And in both these episodes, therefore, he has played the victim of a love cheat whose own lover was murdered.
I thought he was the one that got murdered in the first episode. He was the victim. Yes, but then she got murdered as well.
Yes, what we're trying to say here, yeah. And then in this one, no, it doesn't
No,
make
the
sense.
lover didn't get murdered.
No.
Keegan wasn't anyone's lover. I think you've got that all wrong.
I've got it all wrong, yes.
But still, he was in 2 episodes.
Yeah, he was in 2 episodes where he was... Okay,
There was a murder in both those episodes.
And... No, that's what I'm trying to say. No. He was the victim of cheating.
He was.
And the partner...
Was the killer in both.
Yes, the partner... His partner...
His wife's lover was the killer in both
yes,
episodes.
That's what I'm trying to get at, yeah.
Okay, we got there eventually.
Eventually. We go back to Keegan's office.
Yeah. Columbo's checking through the pockets on his clothes.
He's nosing around.
He's looking for stuff to do with this special projects remit.
Yep, and then he places down and ponders the toy soldier. And there is a knock at the door.
This is very fortuitous.
Yeah, laundry is becoming a bit of a trope, isn't it?
I've seen it a few times, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of Prescription Murder and Candidate for Crime.
And Make Me a Perfect Murder.
Yes.
As well, where he got tipped off to the partner relationship.
Mm-hmm. If something works.
Keep using it.
Exactly.
But this is a fortuitous turn of events for Columbo. He gets presented with vital information.
Which is?
The name and address of Mr. Dunstan.
An L. Dunstan.
From the movie Dunstan Checks In.
So we go to Dunstan's apartment.
And there's an orangutan.
Making tea.
Yes.
We see Braley arrive at the apartments and retrieve mail.
Yes.
Inside, he pours some champagne and answers the doorbell, but not to the person that he was expecting.
No, he holds out this champagne and it's Columbo, so he withdraws the champagne very rapidly.
Columbo acts surprised to find Braley there, and Braley himself has to admit that Dunstan and him are one and the same person.
Yeah, he's having to think on his feet, so he goes with the truth. It's always the easiest option.
Yes, that this is effectively a love nest.
Yeah, and Columbo explains why he's looking for Dunstan.
Which is?
That he found the Keegan connection.
Yes, he does. And he also queries how Keegan came to know about the place. He then goes on to explain a problem he has. And it's a problem with Keegan's flashlight.
You see where we found the flashlight? Underneath this slip of rock, sir. Like an anvil hanging over the flashlight. Now, how did the flashlight end up under that rock like that? The explosion. We'll see if I can make this clear, sir. This is the explosive pit. Now, the explosion couldn't have blown it over here. This is the rock, sir. And this is the lip. How did the flashlight end up here, underneath the lip? How did it get there?
Your point seems a bit strained, Lieutenant.
Well, sir, flashlights, they don't go flying around all by themselves. Not dirt and leaves under Mr. Keegan's collar, and not flashlights. That's why we did a second autopsy.
Lieutenant, you seemed quite certain all of this was an accident.
Well, sir, nobody wanted it to be an accident more than me. Murder, you wouldn't even want to think about the amount of paperwork for murder.
Murder?
Well, it certainly was a murder, sir. The second autopsy. We found a knife wound in Mr. Keegan's heart where he was stabbed. I'm sorry, sir. We have to face that now.
Oh dear.
Not what Braley wanted to hear.
It really wasn't.
No. He is shocked and he has to play along. And he again reinforces his supposed alibi.
He does, and he kind of wanders over to the window.
Yes, and panics. Why does he panic?
He sees Jenny arriving.
Yes, but fortunately, and this is again, it shows how well put together this episode is, because she recognises Columbo's car. And how would she recognise Columbo's car?
Well, because you're just talking to him about it.
Exactly. So that scene wasn't just necessarily just a trope.
Yep.
To have it there for the sake of it. It was quite important in the plot.
It sets this up.
Mm-hmm.
So she escapes without being spotted, but it's not going to do any good, I don't think.
Not in the long term. After seeing Jenny disappear, Braley feels a little bit more comfortable and confident.
Yeah, but he doesn't let it show that in the sense of being too relaxed.
No. He's trying to usher Columbo out, but Columbo insists on using the toilet.
Yeah, he's a good guddle around the bathroom, doesn't he?
Yes, and he picks up and inspects. Now, does he steal at this point?
He does.
What transpires to be a decorative toothbrush holder from a cabinet.
I think it's a travel toothbrush, one that you can tuck away.
Yes. And he heads back to the General's house.
I'm not sure that would be admissible evidence.
No, but he's not using it. It's not evidence in it's nothing to do with the murder. That's only
it's
evidence.
just helping him work out what's going on.
It's only helping him put pressure on Jenny. Doesn't prove anything to
But
do with
still,
the murder.
fruit of the poisonous tree, anything that flows from that illegal operation would be inadmissible as well. Anyway, he actually heads off to confront Jenny straight away.
He does.
Or at least after an indeterminate period of time.
Yeah, and the General's house, the pool boy explains that the soldiers were delayed but the books arrived on time. And then Jenny arrives and Columbo enjoys a sherry with her. And he remarks on something, a coincidence.
There are 4 stars on the glass.
And he has seen that style of glass before.
At the Love Nest.
Yes, at Dunstan's apartment. Outraged at the implication, Jenny makes to leave, but Columbo sternly stops her.
Yeah, he nails her.
He does.
With the toothbrush.
He shows her that toothbrush. Or the toothbrush holder, the case.
Yeah, he's fingerprinted it. Or at least he says he's fingerprinted it. And she confesses.
She's distressed and admits the affair.
But she did not know that Keegan was aware of it.
And then she is relieved when Columbo tells her that he doesn't need to mention this to the General.
Yeah, that's just to give her an opportunity to do it herself, I think.
Jenny Paget was played by Janet Ilber. She was born in 1951 and she's been in Baywatch, The Best Times, The Craft, but she is best known as a dancer. And she actually performed alongside Rudolf Nureyev.
Very well known dancing man.
Very, very well known, and she's a dance instructor and I think she has her own schools. And looking at her now, you can tell, I think, the way she holds herself, her physical appearance, is that of a dancer.
Okay.
So Columbo heads back down to the pool house from the main house.
He's got questions for the General.
He wants to know why the General was interested in the Special Funds Project report. And he is reluctantly told that it was because of the discretionary nature, which in itself encourages dodgy goings-on.
This is an issue.
It is. Why?
If it's a discretionary fund, why are there records of everything?
Because discretionary just means that it's up to the foundation where they spend the money.
Yeah.
So the fund is provided and then it's up to... It's like a loan system or a grant that you might have. You don't have... Okay, what it means exactly is that the donations or the funds have not already been ring-fenced or something. So it's in this pot and then it's up to that fund to spend it as it sees fit. It doesn't mean to say that you don't have to track it. Discretionary just means it's up to...
You just have to justify it.
Yeah. It's like, okay, you might want, £1 million there, or you might ask for money to do X, Y, and Z, and it will be dispersed as the committee or whoever runs it.
My thinking was maybe it didn't require the trustees to sign off, which made it difficult to work out what was going on.
That may also be the case. It may be the case that whoever heads the Special Funds Project has got full control and remit over spending.
Could be.
Yeah.
Why did you think it was an issue?
I didn't.
Oh, you're just agreeing with me?
Yeah, because I thought you were going to say something that
You could agree with.
I agreed with it. But I disagree. No,
Oh well.
Yeah.
There you go. I got the feeling at this stage that the General probably was aware of the affair. But
Yeah.
it's not clarified that he definitely knew for sure. But
No.
I started to get that impression at this stage.
Let's,
But just
before
when
we
he's talking
get
to
to
Columbo, it was
yeah.
even just while he's talking to Columbo, I've started to make this note.
Sure. Columbo tells the General that this is now a murder investigation.
This upsets him a lot.
He seems, I've noted that, he seems genuinely and deeply affected as Columbo leaves. I think it may well, my thinking, and we can discuss in the next scene actually, which I really enjoyed, and we've got a clip. Really liked this, the overall performance by the General. And the character development here, there was weight and depth to it, and I think I might be thinking too much and reading too much into it, but the way he played him, it made me think that this, he was affected because he used to be this powerful man who would control armies or you know, whatever, regiments, etc., and he knew everything that was going on. He controlled it, everything went by him, and now he's accepting that he's retiring. He doesn't control the Foundation, and now people have been murdered.
Yeah, there's things going on in his watch.
Yeah, and he can't control anything, and he's now effectively just an old man with no power and nothing. And even more so, if it's correct as, well, we find out it is correct, that he's aware that in his personal life, everything is not ideal. He probably just feels quite despondent about life.
He definitely seems a bit despondent, almost despairing at this stage, and that would fit.
Yeah, and things don't get any better.
Well, yeah, they're about to get a lot worse.
What happens?
His wife appears.
I saw Lieutenant Columbo.
He told you about all this awful murder business?
Yes. And some other things from his investigation. The things we have to talk about.
Well, this is of no concern.
Please, Jack, don't look at me. Not yet. Lieutenant Columbo knows what I have to tell you now. About someone in my life. A relationship I swore you'd never know about. A man I could never care for the way we care for each other.
Jenny, you're a young woman. Strong, lovely. Full of needs that I can't provide for you. You really believe that I haven't made any allowances for that?
I never wanted to hurt you, Jack.
You've been the most loving companion that I ever could have been blessed with. And for the rest of it, I want to thank you for your discretion. And now if you need to tell me who, when, where, I beg of you, don't. With all my heart, don't. Please, Jenny, I couldn't bear it.
Yeah, I thought this scene elevated this episode above many others in terms of performance.
It was nicely done.
It was genuinely, yeah, it was an emotionally charged scene, and I think in contrast to last week's episode where we talked about, or the subject matter was cheating and infidelity and all this type of thing, and it was so superficial in the 80s last week, and it was actually a bit of a joke. This scene is how you can do that type of thing properly.
Definitely, I would say 100% correct. Mm-hmm. From a plot point of view, I have issues with Jenny choosing who she chose to conduct her affair, if she genuinely cared so much about the General.
Why?
I suspect choosing someone that he didn't like is a bit cruel.
I don't think there's any evidence to suggest that this has been a recent affair, and she may well have been in a relationship with Braley before the General got suspicious of him.
Possibly.
Because
even then, why someone that he works with, or...
Well, you have to remember, we have to assume here that Braley's been given this position of power, and if he wasn't liked by the General at all, you know, I'm sure the General in the past could have put the kibosh on his, you know, I think they work He's invited to these parties. They're friends. This is
Does that not
his
make it
employee.
worse? Should you not choose a complete stranger?
I don't think. I mean, if I don't know, but yes, you should. We shouldn't have done it at all. And yeah, you shouldn't have chosen someone you know. But your point was that she's chosen someone who the general doesn't like, and I don't think she did do that. I wouldn't have assumed that. I don't think she knew or knows. He's not the type of guy, I don't think, who's going to discuss his business life with her and get her involved in his suspicions. I don't think they sit down at an evening, have a glass of wine and discuss the day's goings on.
I think whether Braley and the General were acquaintances, friends, colleagues, whatever, the fact that it was someone he knows would have made it worse for him if he were to find out, no matter the relationship.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with that. But we head from there to the church, and again, this is similar to By Dawn's Early Light. We saw Columbo in a church service being not quite as inappropriate this time, but not far off.
You say not quite as inappropriate? They got up and down 4 times.
But it wasn't during a service. It was just this is the sort of morning lying. No, not in state perhaps. But yeah, the same thing where people do walk in and out and sit down. It's just for people to spend a few moments on their own. But still, you don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been very sparsely attended for a funeral.
Yeah. No, this is the night before, I think.
Yeah.
And people are paying respects to Keegan, whose coffin is, as you say, lying on the altar. A military man sits down beside Columbo and wishes him good luck. He then moves seats and Columbo follows.
Yeah.
He tells Columbo that he has not seen Keegan in 7 years, not since they spoke at the Pentagon.
Yeah, Columbo seems to lose interest at that point.
Yeah. Oh, you can't help me. I'm away, goodbye, and he gets up to leave. Until the man who is named Sergeant Tanzer tells him about some recent phone calls where he provided Keegan with classified intelligence, but he can't reveal that at the moment to Columbo.
Yeah, they spoke on the day that Keegan died.
Mm-hmm.
And then the two of them start this dance around the room where they move to the 3 different pews.
Yes.
And then he can tell them the secrets.
He does.
It must be annoying everyone else that was there.
Including Braley, who has been looking on anxiously through this conversation.
Absolutely.
We don't hear, at this point, what Tanzer has to say.
No.
We are now back in Braley's office.
This is a funny little scene, and a bit unfortunate.
Explain.
There's a secretary who's being played as a ditzy secretary, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Who's been asked to shred the Special Projects files.
Yeah, both reports.
Yes. And she steps out the door because Columbo's waiting there to speak to Braley to reply to that request, saying Braley's not available.
Mm-hmm.
And she notices that Columbo also has a copy of this report.
Yep.
And then she gets mixed up. I don't know what she's doing here, why she starts to talk to Columbo about which report's which, and which one are you reading, and what's the difference, and which one's...
A little bit of padding. And
well, it's not even padding, but it's just... It gives Columbo critical evidence, and it's weird. I don't understand why she would be doing this.
Yeah. I think it's, again, it's a little bit of a heavy-handed plot device.
Anyway, it gets the red report into Columbo's hands.
Yeah. And also, this is at the point where Columbo discovers that there are 2 reports.
There's that as well, and he just disappears off with it. She's got nothing to do there. She's left wondering where he went.
And we're in the General's house again.
This is later on. Braley's there, and he notices this red report.
Yeah, he's been asked to attend by the General. And he does. He's shocked to see it lying on the table as the General enters. I think at this point, Braley realises that the best form of defence is attack.
Attack.
Yeah. And immediately tells the General that he has a report that he wasn't meant to see. And but it's for his own protection.
Yeah, his name is now going to be dragged through the mud.
Yes, the General is enraged that Braley has been selling guns to these dodgy characters and sources, and at the same time lining his own pockets with Foundation money. But, as you say, Braley threatens him. He will either be seen as a fool or a co-conspirator.
That's it. And he even starts blurting out about the affair.
Very cruel. Very, very cruel.
There's no good reason for that other than to make the General miserable.
Yes, it's not just he tells him about the affair. He talks about what they discussed in their bed or his bed and all that. Exactly, specific details are just nasty.
But we get the impression that the General had either worked it out or been told by now.
Yes.
Because he's not shocked or upset at this moment. Or not visibly.
No. Jenny appears from another room. Braley very coldly tells her to advise her husband to keep quiet.
Yeah, and he seems to agree. He hands over the report and tells Braley where to get the other copy.
But in fairness, firstly, Jenny does not agree.
Sure.
She advises him the opposite.
He's not having it.
No. And he does, as you say, hand over the report.
Yeah. The other copy is through in the pool house.
Yes. So Braley goes to the pool house in order to pick it up.
He does.
Before we go to the pool house, Colonel Frank Braley was played by Robert Foxworth. He was born in 1941. He starred in 155 episodes of Falcon Crest. He's been in 6 Feet Under, Late Line, and also, Ian, he has been in Star Trek Enterprise, Stargate SG-1, whatever that is, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and Babylon 5. And in all of these science fiction shows, he has played someone involved in a military coup.
That's interesting trivia.
A little bit like, he's sort of involved in military coups just now, in this episode.
No, he's not taking control.
No, but he is arming them, you'd have thought.
I suppose, yes, not his own military, but
Yeah.
foreign militaries, yeah.
He was also the husband of the late Elizabeth Montgomery, who played Samantha in Bewitched.
There you go.
So, we go to the pool house.
And we know what's going to happen here.
We do. As he lifts the report, Columbo appears. And after a chat, Columbo wishes him good evening. And I think we see him himself think, oh, that was easy.
Yep.
I was expecting more of a challenge. However, as he leaves, Columbo asks if he thinks that the report was what got Keegan killed. And Braley asks Columbo what he thinks. And then we have Columbo go on to explain the motive. Columbo then admits that he thinks Braley killed Keegan and proceeds to discuss where he found the soldier. The soldier that was found behind the books that had apparently arrived.
That's right.
First. But Braley has a reasonable explanation. Can you remember what that was?
He had set the soldiers out in groups on the shelf before he put them on the board, and obviously one had gone astray.
Perfectly fine.
Absolutely fine with that.
However, Columbo has a bigger problem.
He does.
A problem with the box that the books came in.
It's a simple matter of volume.
It is. And what is his problem?
The volume of the books is greater than the volume of the box.
And Braley asks what Columbo deduces from this revelation.
He does.
But the books, they can't fit in this box, sir. That's a scientific fact.
And from this scientific fact, you deduce?
Well, I would have to say, sir, that the books, the night Mr. Keegan was murdered, the books were delivered here in the evening in that box marked soldiers, and this box, the one marked books. The box you opened in the morning, sir. I'd say this box had to have the soldiers. So that you could set them all up here ahead of time for the charge up Cemetery Hill. And that evening, you went to the training camp and you murdered Mr. Keegan without an alibi, Colonel. You murdered him with no alibi at all. Unless the jurors managed to pack all those books in that box. You think they could ever do that, sir?
I expect they'll have difficulty, Lieutenant. I seem to have misjudged myself. And you?
We'll come to the gotcha in the season review, but for my money, Braley folds a little easily here.
Yeah, he does. I've got similar concerns about most of the episodes in this season, to be fair. But as you correctly says, we'll get there in time. And then the episode finishes.
I like the finish.
Explain it.
The camera, as it did in the opening shot, kind of pans over the battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
And as it pulls away, you see one of the models is Columbo.
Yeah.
Dressed as a circus ringleader.
I wonder if you can buy those Columbo figurines anywhere.
I doubt it. But if anyone knows, let us know.
So there we have it. The final episode of Columbo's 8th season.
And the first of the revival.
Mm-hmm. And you enjoyed it, as you said at the top.
I did. It's my favourite of the 4.
Yeah, I think I might agree with you. Yeah.
It's just nicely done. There's not anything... You're not sitting watching going, oh, come on.
There's nothing obnoxious about it. The little quirky things like the last scene there are okay, unlike the circus ringmaster.
Yeah.
And unlike the bang at the end of Guillotine.
Yeah, they were silly.
Yeah. And unlike the general nonsense of Sex and the Mad Detective, which is just a bit... Nah.
It's of its time.
Yeah. But no, I think I would tend to agree. This is a strong episode that would be strong in any decade.
Yeah. We've got a season finale wrap up to do.
We have.
Do you want to do the evidence and the...
Yeah, we'll do the motive and the evidence of this episode first.
And then we'll go through the 4.
Yeah. So motive.
It's to protect his financial interests.
Yes, to prevent the exposure of embezzlement by a blackmailer.
We've seen this before.
We have, many times. Clues. An awful lot here, so I'll rattle through them. Keegan still being in the field when he shouldn't have been. The flashlight position. Leaves in the collar. Braley cleaning the mud. The job seeking. Stopping on a certain day. The soldier on the shelf. The Dinstan's ID. The 5-star glasses. 2 copies of the report. And then the books not fitting into the box.
Well, there were only 4-star glasses. But also the stab wound to the heart from the second autopsy.
Yes.
It's a critical...
to show that he was actually murdered.
Yes.
Yeah, how did I miss that? Yeah, you're correct. Will we do a little bit of production information?
Oh yeah, let's run through production information. Any remaining trivia and we'll wrap up at the end.
Okay. 1st of May 1989 at 95 minutes length, but I think it's actually only 90 minutes again.
On the DVD, I don't know where these 5 minutes are coming from.
No, that's his IMDb. Sam Wanamaker was the director. Second of 2 Columbo episodes. We discussed him in the Bye Bye Sky High episode.
At season 6, if you want to go back and look at that.
Mm-hmm. This was his last ever role as a director.
There you go. I gave you my Sam Wanamaker trivia that previous episode.
You did.
I have no more.
Cy Salkowitz was the writer. He died in 1991, aged just 65. This was his only Columbo episode, and also this was his last ever writing credit.
Well, he did die fairly soon after.
He did. He has written for Police Story, Nakia, Mission Impossible, Perry Mason, and 37 episodes of Ironside.
Okay.
That's me.
No more gems?
Just the... I gave you his name being displayed as a piece of trivia. That's enough, surely,
for
this
a
week.
highlight of the series so far.
Perhaps, I don't know if we can do it, Ian. Can we stick up a screenshot?
Well, I'll see if I can do it, and if it's there, then yay.
Okay, if not, I will edit this out.
I'm sure we can, yes, no problem.
Cool. Okay, season review. Explain the concept.
We go through the episodes from this season, and assuming that the killer did not confess or was able to retract their confession and had competent legal advice or representation, would they be convicted of murder?
Okay, so episode 1 was Columbo goes to the guillotine.
It's one of these ones where you are questioning, is the circumstantial evidence enough to build a case?
Mm-hmm. So, Columbo did not have enough evidence himself in the episode and had to rely on his attempted murder by guillotine by the killer.
He did.
So, what we do know is that the killer can be tried for attempted murder.
Of Columbo.
But that only proves that he tried to kill Columbo.
It's not relevant to the other crime.
But if you look at all the evidence and you say to yourself, okay, you present the jury with this information and say, well, why was he trying to kill the detective who was actively investigating the other murder? It may be enough to sway the jury.
Well, along with the bullets that can presumably be traced to him.
Yes, and the fact that Columbo showed how he could have locked the room behind him to make it look like a closed door killing.
And the motive with the African prison.
Yeah, so you've got...
And the opportunity. He
Yeah.
doesn't have an alibi.
You've got a lot there. There's not one piece of evidence that does prove it, but an awful lot of circumstantial.
It's a strong case. I think he might well find himself convicted of murder. Certainly attempted murder, so he's going to jail.
Yeah, I was swaying, but I think, yeah, I'll give him guilty on this one.
Okay.
So what are you saying?
Yeah, I'm guilty.
Guilty, okay. We go next to Murder, Smoke and Shadows.
Well, this guy had a complete breakdown, so he might well end up at an institution rather than a jail.
Yeah, potentially.
The evidence, again, it's similar. There's not a smoking gun, so to speak, that pins him, but ordering the water truck to make the electric fence effective.
Mm-hmm.
The video with the sister that had been submitted to police previously. The stub that puts him at the location.
So you've got very, very compelling evidence for motive.
Opportunity.
Opportunity, yeah.
I think he might well struggle to get off with that.
Yes. Then you have also the witnesses which will testify that he tried to bribe the secretary.
Yes.
About who was going to mention the
phone
calls.
Yeah.
Again, quite a similar situation. I'd be swayed to guilty.
Yeah, me too. And I think the video might also see him charged with the negligent behaviour in relation to the death of the sister.
Yes. Last week's Sex and the Married Detective. This is a far more cut and dry case for myself.
You don't think she's guilty?
I don't think she's been found guilty.
There's not any evidence.
None whatsoever. All we have is the fact that we can prove that she bought a similar looking outfit.
Yeah, and we might be able to prove that she was in the office when the affair was going on.
Yep, but that's all. She bought a black dress, and as you had mentioned in the episode, they don't even have the black dress because she burned it.
Yeah, and the hat and everything else.
Yeah, so I don't think you can send someone to prison for buying a dress,
especially when you don't know if it was the same dress.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the thing about not saying she was there because you knew she couldn't be, that's not proof of anything.
No. So I think not guilty.
Not guilty.
And then we have this week's.
Similar. We don't really have any proof that he did it.
No.
You don't have any of the evidence. There's no knife or anything. That was all binned and destroyed.
All Columbo was able to do in this episode was disprove an alibi.
That's right.
But disproving an alibi does not prove anything else.
It's not even clear whether he got the motive. Because even if you're showing that there was embezzlement and Keegan knew about it, you still have the possibility that Keegan was in for a dodgy deal. He said it himself.
Yeah. No, I'm going to go not guilty on this one.
It's one where you can see why they might find him guilty. So there's a chance, but again, yeah, I think I agree with you. I'm going to go with him being released, not guilty.
Okay, so
2 and 2.
2 out of 4, yeah.
Yeah.
Not really the world's greatest detective. Well, it's not really the hit rate, is it, you want for the world's greatest cop? Sure,
but then the DA's got extra evidence to pull in. So it's not really Columbo's case once it gets to them.
Yeah. And in Columbo's universe, they all admit it anyway, so...
Yeah, from his point of view, his work is geared towards breaking them down mentally and eliciting the confession, which he does.
In any case, thoroughly enjoyable episode.
Very good. A nice rebound season, or not rebound, but return season.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be interesting to see if they can keep up this sort of quality.
Yeah. Next week, we commence with Season 9, Murder, a Self-Portrait.
Is that a comma after the word murder?
Yes.
Interesting.
And we should also mention that we will be following IMDb's season ordering.
Yeah, the DVDs call everything after Season 9 10.
Yeah.
So we're breaking it down up to Season 13 based on the IMDb listings.
Yeah. Makes everyone nicer and more structured, I think.
Yeah. I'll give out the usual reminder to people. Join us on Twitter at Columbo Podcast, on Facebook where you can search for Columbo Podcast, and at columbopodcast.com. We have some great chat every episode. You can go back and talk about all the episodes if you want as well. There's a good group of folks there, always keen to talk about the show and what's come out of each particular discussion. Rate and reviews on iTunes, subscribe if you don't mind, that'd be great. It helps other people find the show, which means there's more folk joining in the chat and it's a lot more engaging for everybody.
Hear, hear.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Cheerio.
You have been listening to the Columbo podcast from Heard Yet Media.